Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I've been working my tail off since I finished the Appalachian Trail, so I haven't had a chance to make any new videos, so welcome back again. Today I want to talk about tips for the new hikers. I know new hikers are already, for northbound anyway, already out there. So these are just some tips that I wish I had had or at least listened to, because I'm sure the information was out there that I wanted to put together for you so that you can perhaps avoid them on the trail. So tip number one, and probably the biggest and most important one, is you don't have to have everything dialed in. People always, they freak out about, oh, my base weight is this much, I don't have this right sleeping bag, and will that be, and should I have, and all of those things. Really try to do your very best and pack appropriately, but you know what? Work with what you got. If you've got an old sleeping bag, well then take it. I would recommend saving up extra money so that you can replace those items as needed, because that's going to really be the biggest factor. You're not going to have everything dialed in, and even if you think you have everything dialed in, it'll probably change, because you really can't experience an AT hike until you've done an AT hike. And I made this mistake too. I thought I had the perfect sleeping bag and everything, and you know what? I ended up changing out a lot of things I didn't anticipate and probably spent more money than I needed to. So tip number two, it kind of flows along with that, is rain gear. The AT is wet. We all know this. When I did my Southbound trip in 2023, it was one of the wettest years in 35 years. So I had a lot of experience with rain. I started with the cheapest outfit I could get, which was probably the best idea, was the frog togs. I do recommend, if you start this way, put some tape in the crotch before you even put it on, because it's going to rip. And then figure out what it is you need. If you need to change it at all, some people move to ponchos, some people just realize, you know what, I'm wet, screw it, it's going to happen. I ended up changing out my entire rain gear, and I'm so happy I did. It worked really well for me. But everyone's different. I had the money to do it, so I did it. So don't stress about it. It's not such a huge deal. You're probably going to be hitting towns, especially if you're going northbound. You'll be able to pick up these items pretty frequently. You're never really that far away from town. And even when we went southbound, 10 days in the wilderness, at the end of the day, it's not that long either. You can put your body through a lot and still make it through. A next one that I have is I overpacked food. And I think people always pack their fear. My fear was being hungry, and because I went southbound and we weren't going to be passing any towns or places I could have resupplied food, I packed a lot of food. I packed way too much food. You don't have that hiker hunger. Just pack what you would normally eat, and maybe a couple of extra snacks and goodies that you'll want, especially the treats. Definitely bring the treats. But if you're going northbound, you're going to be hitting supply stores, so you're going to be able to pick up those things. So just don't pack too much food. It's heavy. Your heavy gear will probably be in the other things that you didn't want to upgrade yet, because you weren't sure if you would really want them or what kind you would want. So don't pack extra food. Number 4, it goes along with sort of your nutrition. Bring a multivitamin. You're going to eat like crap. Particularly if you're older. I did a video on how the AT affected me, and vitamins were definitely a big part of that as well. Bring electrolytes. You're going to need that anyway. You're just going to be sweating out, even if it's raining, a lot of your electrolytes, and you do need to replenish them. And just plain salt in the food you get is not quite enough. So do get a good electrolyte, and it tastes good too. It's a nice switch up from the water you're mostly going to be drinking, because you're going to want to crave something else to drink other than water. Number 4, 5, I don't know what number we're on. Choose your navigation system wisely. Some people bring a book, some people bring a map. I, like many other people, just had the Far Out app. And some people say, oh, that's foolish. I did have a little compass that I wore on my bag, and I did know how to use it. So that helped. But honestly, I just used my phone. I had a charger, so it was always charged. And yes, there could always be, oh, something could happen to your phone. Chances are you're really not alone on the trail. You're going to meet up with someone who can help you. It's kind of hard to get lost on the AT. Not impossible. I did it a lot. Because you're constantly looking at your feet over the roots and the rocks and the streams and the bogs. So sometimes you miss your turn on the white blazes, or they're far, or they're just not very well marked. There are a few areas, I swear, were choose your own adventure. And sometimes when you're up in the Alpines and the Whites, or that transition between Maine and New Hampshire, you've got just the big stone cairns there that are supposed to be your guide. Sometimes they're not as easily found as you think they're going to be, and I did get lost up there, but honestly, I found my way back because of the GPS on my phone, which comes with the Far Out app. And yes, it does work on airplane mode because that's how I had my phone most of the time. So that was definitely my biggest and best, one of my best purchases was the Far Out app. So don't worry about getting lost. I mean, it is ultimately really hard to get truly lost on the AT. Not impossible, but nowadays pretty hard. So don't freak out about it. And next I have is being cold, damp, whether or not you should be bringing down puffies, down sleeping bags. A lot of people are like, oh, I should bring synthetics because down will get wet and it'll be ruined, and it's really not that big of a deal. I didn't bring a puffy. Now, I didn't go in the winter months because I left in June, but I was there till November. My trip took 5 months, so I was there from the beginning of June to the beginning of November, so it did get cold in the Whites, the Smokies, and near the end there was frost, there was snow. But I still didn't bring a puff. Well, I started with a puffy. I sent it home because ultimately I didn't use it. I had a fleece and I layered and a windbreaker, and I was good. And anything else I really did need, I'd pick up along the way. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I think I stressed about it more. Now, I did like having a down sleeping bag, and I definitely carried that in a trash compactor bag. So essentially just a garbage bag in my backpack so it wouldn't get wet, and it wasn't a big deal. And there were a few times it actually did get wet while I was sleeping because the rain my foot would hit the edge of the tent and it was pouring out because it poured out a lot. But it wasn't the end of the world. So I had one little wet spot. It didn't ruin the whole bag. Having a little bit of water on a down sleeping bag is not going to ruin the whole thing. You're unlikely to freeze to death. I think I stressed about it a lot. I think a lot of people stress about it, and you really don't need to. If the weather is going to be truly that terrible, make sure you kind of keep an eye on it, because you do get cell service up there in the mountains. Not everywhere, but chances are you're going to be passing by people who can tell you the weather's going to be truly terrible. And just stay at a hostel. Stay at one of the huts. Just don't go out in the wet. You can find ways to not be in really terrible weather. I mean, it's not always going to work that way, and sometimes you're going to be really cold and it's going to suck, but you can kind of push through it and get out, and don't be unsafe, but it's not a big deal. I got very cold a few times, still pulled it out of the fire, still got done. Definitely a few items that I'm glad I really did have, and a few people didn't, and maybe it's to their own personal choice. Bring a bug net. It weighs nothing. It's just a good idea. You're in the woods. It's wet. There's going to be a lot of bugs. And poles. I don't know how people don't hike without poles. I'm older, so my knees were thankful of it. It saved me from a lot of falls. It held up my tent. It was just, honestly, I couldn't imagine not hiking without poles. There are very few times I didn't use them, but mostly I always had my poles with me. I didn't pack them in my bag very often unless I was occasionally road walking or going through some of the scrambles where they were just not useful. But definitely carry poles. And finally, shoes. Your shoes are going to get wet. You can have waterproof all you want. They're going to get wet. So just pick something that dries easily for you. Take care of your feet. It's the thing that's going to get you from A to B. So you need your feet. Make sure you dry them at the end of the day. If there's any blisters, clean them, take care of them. Don't get any funky illnesses in your feet like MRSA, which can happen when you're walking around in soggy feet, or athlete's foot, or toenail problems. Take care of your feet. Get good shoes. Make sure they're well fitted before. Don't just grab whatever you got and hike out on the trail with brand new shoes, because it's one of the most important piece of gear you have, and your feet need to be taken care of, and they're going to hurt, so take care of your feet. So those are my tips. Honestly, the best advice I can give you is just don't stress about it. You'll figure it out along the way. Try to have it done as best you can and have practiced your gear. But at the end of the day, you're going to figure it out as you go along. Maybe save a little extra bit money for the trail itself as opposed to buying it pre, and then just get it on the trail. It's not really going to be any more expensive. A lot of the gear stores have stuff that you can't get in other places that are like cottage brands. So it's actually really helpful to get your gear on trail. I found Shaw's when we were going southbound a perfect place because they had a great selection. But at the other end, you've got Neil's Gap and whatnot. So on either end, you'll figure it out pretty fast what it is you need and what you don't need. So don't bring a lot of extra stuff. Pack appropriately. You're not going to know that till you get on trail, honestly. Unless you're really well experienced, in which case, you got this. All right, those are my best tips. If you enjoyed this, do give it a like. It does help the algorithm for me. I appreciate all those who have been watching this. So do subscribe. I will be doing more adventures. Haven't decided which ones will be on the docket next, but there will be more. So thank you very much, and I hope you found this helpful.